Dadalhin C. Kalunsang. So, what is GPS? GPS is an acronym for Global Positioning System. Many people use the term GPS for receiving to the receiver that is found in their car, but that's not entirely true.
GPS is more accurately defined as a navigational system that relies on the satellite signals to show an object's location. Other scientists have been working on a satellite based on navigation systems since 1950s. The current GPS predecessors was created in 1973. It was originally commissioned by the United States Department of Defense for use by the military. But during 1980s, the government started permitting civilians to use the system. The device is used GPS work by receiving signals from special satellites that revolve in the Earth twice a day at an altitude of about 13,000 miles. The minimum number of 24 satellites are required the GPS to function. But there are usually about 30 satellites circling the globe in case one fails.
GPS satellites continually emit signals that states two pieces of information.
1. The current time, and 2. Where exactly above the Earth the satellite is at that time. GPS receivers use this information to do a special calculation called triangulation. The receivers compare the time that the signal was sent from the satellite with the time that the signal was received. The GPS receiver needs to get signals from 3 satellites to calculate latitude and longitude. They get the signals from 4 satellites, and it can also calculate altitude. GPS is used in many ways. Scientists use GPS to gather data about earthquakes. Surveyors use it to determine the property lines, and it uses to track delivery vehicles.
A valuable tool is used in this invention. GPS has changed the way we view the world. Later, we will discuss one of the techniques of gathering GPS data.
You're making a sound, don't think of writing it down. If the word gets out, you're gonna go to jail.
There are few surveying techniques used to collect GPS observations: static, rapid static, kinematic, on-the-fly, OTF, and pseudokinematic. Static was the first method of GPS surveying used in the field, and it continues to be the primary technique today. There can hardly be a question that kinematic GPS is the most productive of the several alternative methods, under the right circumstances. However, the necessity of maintaining lock on 4 or more satellites as the receiver is moved currently limits its application to very open areas. There have been recent hybrids between kinematic and static applications. One of them is pseudokinematic, which attempts to take advantage of some of the best aspects of static positioning, such as high accuracy in predictable production, while improving on its drawbacks. It is almost always desirable to increase production by employing shortened observation sessions, providing it can be done while maintaining the required accuracy. Pseudokinematic or park positioning with GPS is a survey technique employed by the National Geodetic Survey, and is first developed by Dr. Benjamin W. Raimondi, who is president of the ZIZs of GPS Incorporated, where he designs and develops real-time and playback software systems and products in support of static and kinematic positioning based primarily upon GPS observations. In the 1980s, this technique has several names. It has come to be known as pseudokinematic, pseudostatic, and intermittent static. The variety in its titles is indicative of its standing between static and kinematic in terms of productivity. It is less productive than kinematic, but more productive than the static method. That's why pseudokinematic is the combination of the two. While it is also somewhat less accurate than either relative static or kinematic positioning, its primary advantage is its flexibility. There is no need for the receiver to maintain a lock on the satellite's signals while moving from station to station. Maintaining a lock on GPS satellites is facing antenna upward and moving to either point. The pseudokinematic techniques require that one stationary receiver or base receiver be placed over a known control station. A rover receiver occupies each unknown station for 5 to 10 minutes. That's why it is one of the reasons why pseudokinematic is the combination of the two. Then approximately 1 hour after the initial station occupation, the same rover receiver must reoccupy each unknown station. a total of 1 to 4 hours apart of observation time. The pseudokinematic technique requires at least 4 common satellites are observed between initial station occupation and the requisite occupation, or called as double occupation, because in pseudokinematic work, it is necessary to occupy the unknown stations twice. This makes pseudokinematic differs from other techniques. In pseudokinematic relative positioning, at least 2 stationary receivers collect up to 10 minutes of data from the same satellites at the same time. A different baseline is occupied by moving one or both of the receivers, without continuous lock. In fact, the receivers may even be switched off during the move. After the move they collect up to 10 minutes of data from the ends of the new baseline. This procedure continues until all of the baselines have been occupied. So far the method is very like other relative positioning techniques, but pseudokinematic differs from the others in that, following the initial occupations, the receivers must return to every one of the baselines in the same manner a second time. As the production advantage of the procedure over the static mode is diminished by the reoccupation requirements, the application of this method is limited over short baselines, preferably under 10 kilometers, where the access to the station is quick and easy. Pseudokinematic technique can be advantageously in areas where there is a fear of signal shading due to vegetation and built-up areas, as there is no requirement for the rover to maintain its lock to the satellite during movement. Study shows that accuracy of ±5 to 10 mm plus 1 part per million means a 5 to 10 mm plus 1 mm error in a 1 km distance is primarily as a result of changed satellite configuration during reoccupation. The 2 main sources of troubles in GPS phase observations are the phase ambiguity and the cycle slip. The phase ambiguity is the determination of the meters, the resolution of the integer number of cycles. The time between the 2 occupations allows the satellites of the second session to reach a configuration different enough from that of the first, for resolution of the phase ambiguity. The second observation-dependent problem is the so-called cycle slip. In simple words, this critical situation occurs when the signals are blocked by some obstructions, for example trees or buildings, and when the receivers re-record the signals. Cycle slip can be considered as a main restriction for using pseudokinematic GPS technique in urban areas due to huge number of expected obstructions. That is why pseudokinematic is less precise to other techniques. It is useful for local applications only, like photo control, lower order control surveys, mining surveys, and preferable if points are along roads. Pseudokinematic, as well as kinematic, procedures tend to encourage radial surveys.
Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time, ain't nobody got time, ain't nobody got time for